Greetings, everyone, Muslim, non-Muslim, ex-Muslim, and everyone in between. In this video, I want to talk about two texts that I happened upon while I was going through some of my Arabic books, doing a little bit of spring cleaning, so to speak. Even though it is supposed to be summer, though, oddly, the weather here is in the 50s, which I don't mind, but I fear that it's going to be really humid and hot the rest of the summer. At any rate, this particular topic from these two texts that I want to read deals with the issue of Muhammad seeing Allah. And I think it's an important one that speaks to a video that I did previously where I asked the question, is Allah an object or a substance? Object in the sense of how the Salafis hold Allah to be, and then substance more in line with the Ash'ari belief on Allah and how they hold Allah to exist. And so I'm going to read from, the first text I'm going to read from is called Mu'jizatul Isra'i wal Mi'raj, the miracle of the Isra and the Mi'raj by the late Sheikh Muhammad bin Jamil Zino. He's a well-known Salafi Sheikh. He passed away years ago. He was originally from Syria and was a Sufi, and then became a Salafi, and was one of the teachers in Dar al-Hadith in Mecca. It's well-known Dar there where they study tenaciously the Salafi ways. The Isra, for those who are not familiar, so linguistically, Isra deals with when Muhammad traveled from Arabia to Al-Quds, to Jerusalem on Buraq, right? So that's the journey from that point to the next point. And then the Mi'raj is his ascension from the Bayt al-Maqdis to the heavens, where there appears to be two viewpoints about whether did Muhammad see Allah or did Muhammad see something else that was not Allah, but that Allah projected so that his actual form could not be seen. And Sheikh Jamil Zino, he starts this off with a question, Hal ra'a Muhammad rabbahu laylatul mi'raj? Did Muhammad see his Lord on the night of the Mi'raj, the night of the Ascension? And he says, اختلف العلماء في الرؤية على قولين. He says that the Muslim scholars, they differ regarding Muhammad seeing Allah. And there's two statements. He says the first is قال فريق منهم إن محمدا رأى ربه. A group from among them say that Muhammad did see his Lord. وقال آخرون, and a second group says إنه لم يرى ربه. He did not see his Lord. So Sheikh Jamil Zino goes on to say, أقول, I say, الصحيح من هذه الأقوال أن النبي لم يرى ربه. So we can see automatically he's taken a position, and this is the position he's gonna argue for in the rest of the text. He says what's correct regarding these statements is that the Prophet did not see his Lord. وَدَلِيلُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ مَيَالِي. And so he starts to give his evidence for why he believes that Muhammad didn't see Allah. And he breaks it down into Alif and Ba. And he says in the Alif, لَقَدْ صَحَ عَنْ عَائِشَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهَا أَنَّهَا قَالَتْ, sorry. He says, and that it's been authentically reported from Aisha that she said, مَنْ زَعَمَ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَأَى رَبَّهُ فَقَدْ أَعْظَمُ فِرْيَةٍ عَلَى اللَّهِ. That whoever alleges that Muhammad saw his Lord, then this is the greatest lie attributed to Allah. Muttafaqun alayh. So this is supposed to be a narration that's found in Al-Bukhari and Muslim. And then the bad part, Sheikh Jamil says, وَفِي رِوَايَةٍ ثَانِيَةٍ لِلْبُخَارِ أَنَّهَا قَالَتْ, and he says in a second narration from Al-Bukhari that she said, مَنْ حَدَّثَكَ أَنْ مُحَمَّدًا رَأَى رَبَّهُ فَقَدْ كَذَبَ. Whoever has informed you that Muhammad saw his Lord, then that individual has lied. وَهُوَ يَقُولُ, And then I believe he's saying that Imam al-Bukhari says in his section, لا تدركه الأبصار, that the eyes cannot see or comprehend Allah. And he puts a footnote here, لا تراه في الدنيا وتراه في الآخرة, from Surah Al-An'am. He says that you will not be able to see him in this life, but you'll be able to see him in the next life. That's an important part that we're going to see a little bit more of when I read the second text. وَلِلْعُلَمَاءِ أَدِلَّةٌ أُخْرَى أَنْ قَالَهَا لِلْقَرِيِّ لِيَكُونُوا عَلَى بَيِّنَةٍ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ. And then so he checks, Jamil, he says, and the ulama, the Muslim scholars, they have other evidence that can be used to help the reader understand the accuracy and that Muhammad did not see his Lord. And he brings two things. He brings a statement of Ibn Taymiyyah, and I'm trying to see if this is from his Majmu' al-Fatawa. Usually he'll put the title, and I don't see it. Yeah, it is from Majmu' al-Fatawa, one of Ibn Taymiyyah's great works on legal rulings. He says, وَلَيْسَ فِي الْأَدِلَّةِ مَا يَقْتَضِي أَنَّهُ رَآهُ بِعَيْنِهِ. He says there's nothing in the evidence that claims that Muhammad saw his Lord with his own eyes. وَلَا ثَابَتَ ذَلِكَ عَنْ أَحَدٍ مِنَ الصَّحَابَةِ. And that this is not something that has been established from any of the companions. This is a strange statement from Ibn Taymiyyah. We're going to hear him say something a little bit more contradictory in a moment. وَلَا فِي الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ مَا يَدُلُّ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. And there's nothing in the Quran and there's nothing in the Hadith literature that give proof to this. بَلْ النُّصُوصَ الصَّرِيحَةِ. Rather, the text frankly or just show plainly في نفيه أولى, that it is negated, that is something that is most preferable to be negated and not to be believed. كما في صحيح مسلم عن أبي ذر قال, as it appears in the Sahih of Imam Muslim from Abu Dhar, one of the companions of Muhammad, that he said, سألت رسول الله هل رأيت ربك. I asked the Messenger of Allah, did you see your Lord? قال, and Muhammad responds to Abu Dhar, نور أنا أراه. It is light that I saw. وفي الصحيحين عن ابن عباس في قوله تعالى, it says, and in the two Sahihs, al-Bukhari and Muslim, that Ibn Abbas, he said regarding the statement, وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الرُّؤْيَا الَّتِي أَرَيْنَكَ إِلَّا فِتْنَةٌ لِلنَّاسِ وَشَجَارَةِ الْمَلْعُونَةِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. And I'm going to use a translation here, a better translation. And we made not the vision which we showed you, but a trial for humankind, and likewise the cursed tree in the Quran. This is Surah Al-Isra. This is, what is that? Isra is verse number 60 is where it's from. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah is using as proof. هي رؤيا عين أريها رسول الله ليلة الأسرى به. He says that it is a vision of the eye in which Muhammad was shown on the night that he traveled from Arabia to Al-Quds. وهذه رؤيا الآيات, and this is from a vision of signs. لأنه أخبر الناس بما رآه بعينه ليلة المعراج, because he informed the people by what he saw with his eyes on the night of Mi'raj, of the Ascension. فَكَانَ ذَلِكَ فِتْنَةٌ لَهُمْ, and this was something that was a trial for those he informed of. حَيْثُ صَدَقَهُ قَوْمٌ, as to the point where there were some people who believed him, وَكَذَّبَهُ قَوْمٌ, and some people disbelieved or refuted or did not believe what he said. وَلَمْ يُخْبِرْهُمْ بِأَنَّهُ رَأَى رَبَّهُ بِعَيْنِهِ. But he did not inform those people that he had seen Allah with his actual eyes. وَلَيْسَ فِي شَيْءٍ مِّنْ أَحَادِيثِ الْمِعْرَاجِ الثَّابِتَةِ ذَكَرَ ذَلِكَ. And there's nothing in the narrations that are about the Mi'raj that are established and authentic that prove this. وَلَوْ كَانَ قَدْ وَقَعَ ذَلِكَ لِذِكْرِهِ. And if it was, this would have been something that would have been mentioned. كما ذكر ما دونه وقد ثبت بنصوص الصحيحة. And this is something, likewise, this is something that would have been mentioned and established in the authentic texts. واتفاق سلف الأمة أنه لا يرى الله أحد في الدنيا بعينه. And it is agreed upon by the Salaf of this ummah, he's saying, of the nation of Muhammad, that Muhammad did not see Allah, or that no one will see Allah in this world with their own eyes. إلا من نازع فيه بعضهم من رؤية نبينا محمد خاصة واتفقوا على أن المؤمنين يرون الله يوم القيامة عيانا كما يرون الشمس والقمر. This is the end of the quote of Ibn Taymiyyah. He says, except for the one who disputes regarding some of the disputes by some of them regarding those who say that Muhammad, our prophet, specifically saw Allah, and it has been agreed upon by the believers that Allah will be seen with their eyes, their own eyes, on the day of judgment, just as they were to see the sun and the moon. And then he goes on to say that this is further elaborated on by Muhammad Amin al-Shinkiti, who was a famous Mauritanian scholar who wrote a famous book of tafsir, Adwal al-Bayan. And he mentions that book, that people can go to that and refer to it, as well as Ibn Hajar in his Al-Fath, which is his explanation on Sahih Bukhari. So if anyone wants to refer to it, they can. That's Sheikh Jamil's take on did Muhammad see Allah? And I want to turn to somewhat of an opposing viewpoint, I feel, but probably with a little bit more elaboration. And this is taken from Nasihati lin-Nisaa, My Advice to the Women, written by a very, very well-known Salafi Sheikha, Abdullah, who is the daughter of Sheikh Muqbil, the late Sheikh Muqbil, for those who are familiar. He was from Yemen, passed away years ago as well. And she presents something that I find quite interesting. And you're going to kind of see how there's some opposing sides to what she's saying. Not totally, but just somewhat. And there's a section where she's asked questions. And so they ask her, هل الرسول رأى ربه ليلة الإسراء والمعراج? Did the messenger see his Lord on the night of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj? Al-Jawab. So the answer to that, she says, فيه اختلاف ذكره ابن تيمية كما في مجموع الفتاوى. She says, there is differences of opinion that have been mentioned by Ibn Taymiyyah in his work, Majmu' al-Fatawa. قال, he says, and she narrates his words, and this is where I find it to be interesting. Ibn Taymiyyah, we saw and read how he said that there are none of the companions who had this viewpoint. Well, look what he says here. He says, إنما كان النزاع بين الصحابة في أن محمدا رأى ربه ليلة المعراج. Rather, there was a dispute among the companions concerning Muhammad seeing his Lord on the night of Mi'raj. فكان ابن عباس وأكثر العلماء السنة يقولون إن محمد رأى ربه ليلة المعراج. So Ibn Abbas, one of the well-known companions of Muhammad, and a majority of the ulama, or many ulama of the Sunnah, said, indeed, Muhammad, they use inna the tawqid of emphasis, without a doubt, Muhammad saw his Lord on the night of the Mi'raj, on the night of the Ascension. وَكَانَتْ عَائِشَةَ, and Aisha وطائفة معها تنكر ذلك. And the group who was with her used to refute this. ولم تروي عائشة في ذلك عن النبي شيئا. And she did not relate anything from the Prophet regarding this, what Ibn Abbas and the other group who held that viewpoint had. She wouldn't relate that. ولا سألته عن ذلك. She didn't ask about that. ولا نكل في ذلك عن الصديق. And there was nothing that came from Abu Bakr regarding that. كما يرونه أناس من الجهال أن أباها سأل النبي فقال نعم. As it's been narrated that there were a group of ignorant people who asked her father about that, and he asked who related that, rather, I'm sorry, I'm going to correct myself, that a group of ignorant people relayed a narration where her father asked the Prophet, and he said yes, he did. وقال لعائشة, and then he said to Aisha, لا, didn't. فهذا الحديث كذب باتفاق العلماء. And this narration can be attributed as a lie for what the ulama agreed upon. وروى ابن خزيمة في التوحيد عن ابن أباس أنه قال رآه بعينه. And it's related by Ibn Khuzaymah in his Tawheed that Ibn Abbas said he saw that Muhammad saw his Lord with his own eyes. So you can see some contradiction here. But she adds, Abdullah says, well, hadith da'if. But no, the hadith, guess what? It's not authentic. كما في التعليق للعقيدة الطحاوية, as it's found on the notes upon the creed of Imam al-Tahawi. Right? What a coincidence. وَالصحيح, now she says like Sheikh Jamil, but what's correct? أنه لم يراه بعينه, that he didn't see, Muhammad didn't see him with his eyes. وَإنما راه بقلبه, but she adds something to it, but rather, didn't see him with his eyes, rather, he saw him with his heart. Okay. Let me see if I want to go on. And then she Abdullah brings the narration that Sheikh Jamil brought about, there's a long isnad, I don't want to read that, where it says, Masruq says to Aisha, Ya amata, hal ra'a Muhammadun rabbahu, did Muhammad see his Lord? فقالت, and she says to him, لقد قف شعري مما قلت, that my hairs are standing on edge by you asking this question. And then she goes on to say, just like I translated from the hadith, whoever says that Muhammad saw his Lord, then he's lied. He has lied. And then she reads the verse in Surah Al-An'am, ayat number 103, لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار. The eyes cannot see him, but he can see the eyes. وهو اللطيف الخبير, and he is the most generous. He is the all-informing. وما كان لبشر أن يكلمه الله إلا وحيا أو من وراء حجاب. And she brings also Surah Ash-Shura, verse number 51. And it's not befitting and there is no human being except that Allah speaks to him by way of al-wahi, by way of revelation. We talked about that in previous videos, so you can go back to those about listening and speaking, about the whole mode of revelation, the Islamic notion of revelation. So go back to that, or from behind a hijab. And so this goes back to Muhammad's statement that he saw Allah nur-wise, meaning there's a hijab, Allah wears a hijab. Not in the sense of the way women wear hijab, but it's a little bit different. Hijab here can mean like a cover or something that prevents you from seeing what's behind it, okay? Just to be fair in the Arabic language. And then she says, Muslim brings a narration from Ata and Ibn Abbas, that Ibn Abbas said, Rahu biqalbi. And now she brings another narration where she thinks this, she's saying this is more a proof that he saw Allah with his qalb. And then she brings the statement of Abu Dhar, the Sheikh Jamil brought as well, Nurun anna rahu. When Abu Dhar asked, did you see Allah? And he says that I saw light, is what I saw. And so those are the two texts that I wanted to share. Just wanted to mention both of those on this issue of did Muhammad see Allah? Just as a tidbit or something to share on the video on my channel. as a video for people to talk about and bring discussion and contemplate. I have some points that I wrote down here as I was reading both of these, and I thought this is the first one. So Sheikh Jamil, he presents one side disingenuously, and he doesn't give the reader the full picture. Unfortunately, he does like this. It's almost like he pulls this the classical Greek rhetorical way or structure of giving an argument. You only give your viewpoint, you blast those, and don't show their side. And I felt this would probably have been a lot better. Sheikh Jamil Zeno, he does this a lot in his books. He's notorious for always bringing his side, the Salafi side, and even the when there's this disagreement among the Salafis, he'll go with the more stronger opinion of the Salafis and push aside other Salafi viewpoints. And for me, it probably would be better as a composition instructor that I usually teach my students the Rogerian argument. A Rogerian argument, you present the opposition side fairly and balanced, and then you present your side, and then you make the case for why your side and solution is better. And you do it in a humanistic way. You don't smash the opposing viewpoint, right? You don't put that viewpoint down. You just strictly present their side. That way the reader can make their own decision whether your argument is strong or not. And I think in this case, Sheikh Jamil, he falls short of the line with going towards that more classical Greek way of arguing. It would be interesting to see him if he had written in a Rogerian way. There are some fuqaha who do present fiqh in that aspect, and I highly enjoy those methods when you read some fiqh books and you're just like, well, what is the proof then? And you don't. The faqih wants you to reach your own conclusion based on either the madhab you follow or based on the adillah, based on the evidences, right? And so it's kind of like a Rogerian argument. It's not though. Another point as I move away from Sheikh Jamil and look towards Abdillah's text, how we saw two different ways of expression, two different ways of sharing information, and two different ways of giving us insight to this issue of Muhammad seeing his Lord. Did he see his Lord or not? And I wrote here, Abdillah almost shows both sides, almost. She lets us know that there's a situation. There was Ibn Abbas and his group versus Aisha and her group. Ibn Abbas's group held that Muhammad did see Allah. Aisha and her group holding that no, Muhammad didn't see his Lord. Right? And both seem to have really strong opinions here. And what for me automatically when I read this just proves how the companions did differ in terms of Aqidah, how they did differ in terms of Allah and Allah being seen. I really wanted to see more, like what Sheikh Jamil does and what Sheikh Jamil doesn't do, and what Abdillah doesn't do either. They don't show us the Ibn Abbas side. Show us, more of it. Now, she did give a couple of one statement where she says that Ibn Abbas says that Muhammad saw his Lord with his eyes, and then she says the hadith is da'if, but she doesn't go into detail how it's da'if and what kind of da'if hadith it is. If there are other ulama who strengthen the hadith to the level of Hasan or Hasan Sahih. And so there's a lot missing there. And I think this is also disingenuous of her to not, they both don't show us that other side, what was going on. And then this whole thing that, she authenticates Imam Muslim's statement that Ibn Abbas saying rather, that Muhammad saw Allah with his heart. What does that mean exactly, right? Like break that down to us. How do you see with your heart? Is that a metaphor, right? A lot is not explained in these types of works. You'd have to go digging deep in the crates and do research to really find out what that's meant, how the scholars interpreted that he saw Allah with his heart, what that means. And of course, we know that it's not literal in that sense. And it brings me to a final point. I'm trying to read my handwriting. I hate when I write terribly. The main point here that I notice in both of these is this, and I'll give them credit here. They both show this unity in saying that the most correct view is that Muhammad did not see his Lord, but the believers, and only an elite few, so some elitism in heaven, Only an elite few will see Allah with their own eyes, just like they see the sun and the moon. Now, if that's the case, what immediately came to my mind, and this is what I kind of want to close the video with, is if believers are going to see Allah on the day of judgment, that means Allah has a form. That means Allah has shape. That means Allah has those physical characteristics that the human eye will be able to see. Okay. And if that's the case, what it brings us back to is this video that I did, is Allah an object or is Allah a substance? And so for those who haven't seen it, you can go back to again and look at it. But I think this is a good opportunity to really open up discussion about that. You know, the believers are going to see Allah on the day of judgment, right? What does that form look like? And this is, I think, going back to, as far as Salafi discourse and using critical Salafi discourse analysis, this shows us how Salafis use the power of the written discourse to manipulate early Islamic scholarship and also use it to kind of put forward their viewpoint that Allah does have a form, Allah does have a body, Allah will be seen by eyes. Whereas the Ash'aris would be like, nah, that's not happening. That Allah can't be seen by the eyes, right? Again, it's an issue that will never be resolved because, like, Bloods and Crips, Salafis and Ash'aris are always going to be fighting each other. And they've had a rivalry much longer than Bloods and Crips, right? At any rate, that's what I wanted to present. Hopefully I'll get some good feedback. Love to hear what everyone has to say. And until the next video, everyone, please stay gold.